Hi, this is John from Faith 101. One of the really fun things about doing these videos, these kind of talking to camera videos, is the feedback I receive. Several weeks ago I started doing a series about what Christians can learn from other faiths, religions and philosophies. And it's really interesting because the feedback I've received from that has basically been two-sided. On the one hand, non-Christians have tended to say, it's really great to see that you're talking about other ways of seeing things and other views about the world and that you appreciate other people. And a number of Christians, not all by any means, but a number of Christians have been very cautionary and, ooh, I'm not sure you should be doing that, and gosh, it sounds like you're promoting other religions and faiths and philosophies. Well, I think it's important to say a few things. Number one, I don't think I would ever be in a position where I would be saying something that just completely tried to dismantle, disagree, add something to Christian faith and theology that wasn't already there. I hope that's pretty apparent that I'm not doing that. And the other thing, which is actually really important, is if you're going to engage in some kind of activity as a Christian and you're going to be questioned on it, a really good response is to be able to say, Jesus did it. And there's two important examples I would use. One of which is the Good Samaritan, where Jesus is famously asked, if you're supposed to be treating other people as your neighbor, who is your neighbor? Is that a literal thing? Is that a figurative thing? And the story Jesus tells is about this guy who's injured, and three people come along, two of whom are Jews, totally ignore the guy, it's a Jewish guy who's injured, and his countrymen, his compatriots, his brothers in the faith, just totally ignore him. And a Samaritan comes along and helps him. And the Samaritans lived in kind of the center-ish of the Holy Land. And these were people who had got mixed up with the Assyrians and had a faith that Jews considered heretical. They just said these people are absolutely dead wrong about everything. They were the bad guys. And, Jesus uses a Samaritan as this example of someone who knows who his neighbor is and is showing love in a way that Jesus said, that's it. That's the guy you want to imitate. He didn't say, go believe theologically everything the Samaritans believe, but he did say, absolutely, that's the way you want to be. That guy's a role model. The second case, which is less well known kind of outside the Christian world, is there was a case where Jesus is going around doing his Jesus miracle thing and healing people, and a Roman Centurion comes along and is actually very humble in front of Jesus and says, I don't deserve to enter the room you're in. And Jesus kind of says, don't worry, it's okay. And the centurion comes in and says, my servant needs healing. And Jesus says, oh, well, let's get me and the servant together and, I'll heal him. And the centurion says, no, you don't need to do that. All you need to do is say that he'll be healed. And I know who you are, and my servant will be healed. And Jesus says at that point, nowhere in Israel have I found someone of such faith. That's profound. Here's Jesus dealing with someone who represents the powers that are going to kill him, who represents the powers that have been oppressing the Jews for a very long time, are going to have a huge massacre of the Jews in a few decades, destroy the temple. And he's saying, this is the guy who has more faith than anyone I know. In all my travelings around the world, this guy, this pagan, has shown more faith in me than anybody else. And what happens after that, we don't know. We don't get the follow-up story. We don't know if this centurion went on and became a Jesus-following Christian, if he went back to paganism. We don't know. All we know is that he expressed great faith, which Jesus said, he's a role model. Check that out. And so, when I come along and I say that people from different faiths and religions have a way of exhibiting behaviour that maybe we as Christians should look into, should look up to, should admire, Jesus did it. Not an accident. You know, if we're going to believe that there's a God and we're going to believe that he involves himself personally in the world, you can't say, oh, just happened to be a Samaritan, happened to be a Roman Centurion. Not accidental. And so we're left then, well, what do we make of that? Well, I think it's fantastic. There have been about 100 billion people in the history of the Earth. Interestingly, if you're a young Earth creationist watching this, there have been about 100 billion people. If you're an old Earther, then there have been about 107 billion people. Those millions of years, billions of years actually constitute very few humans. And so, let's say there's 100 billion people, 4 billion of them ever have been Christians. If there's a God and God's watching what we're doing, I don't think he's just going to take 96% of the people who have ever been and just say, that's a write-off, bit of a waste of space, sorry about that, focused over here. It seems ludicrous. So when I come forward and I say, I think we as Christians can learn from these people, I feel I'm following in pretty good footsteps. And I hope you do too. Thanks very much.